Naimbag nga malum kada tayo ang amin. Ditoy, welcome. Ayun, before I say anything else and before our program commences, we would just like to acknowledge in our presence a national artist for literature, Dr. Gemino Abad. So we have a great lineup of lectures here for you today. This is brought to us by the 𝗩𝗶𝘀𝗀𝗏 UP Institute for Creative Writing, and this is part of their extension lectures to widen their reach in various communities, and we are so glad that they came up to Baguio to bring to us this lecture from the National Writers Workshop from the University of the Philippines. So, ayan, we have Dr. Gemino Abad, Dr. Romulo Baquiran, Mr. Kenneth Guda, and Mr. Junley Lazaga as our panelists for this afternoon. Ayan, so I think our Dean, Dr. 𝗩𝗶𝘀𝗶𝗃, has a few welcoming remarks for everyone. Dean?
Maptang dyan ako, sonsikata dyan ami. Good day, everyone. So, UP Baguio is very honored to host this extension lecture of the UP National Writers Workshop. And so, for our UP Baguio students, among us today are our literary luminaries in the Philippines, just in case. So Meghan Markle says she has "This Is My Truth" in her podcasts, and then her husband Prince Harry also has his own version of his truth in his memoir 𝗩𝗏𝘀𝗀𝗏 Spare, which I have not yet bought. And then so the late Queen says, yes, but we may have our recollections or our memories of events may vary. So how do we make sense of all of these statements? Closer to home, Ami Marcos says, or said, she was made in Malacanang. It is unfortunate that we don't have literature as a general education course now at UP Baguio. So, but this afternoon, we hope to find in literature the truth that will set us free. Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you, Dean 𝗩𝗍𝗻𝘋. Ayun. So our program will start with a lineup of lectures, and then after that, the floor will be opened for question and answer, open forum from the audience. So I hope that sounds good. Okay. So welcome po to our panelists. I think we can begin. Can we start? Okay, so we will begin first with Dr. Gemino Abad. Let me introduce him for you, although he actually really needs no introduction. Dr. Gemino Abad, University Professor Emeritus of Literature and Creative Writing at the University of the Philippines, is a poet, fictionist, and literary critic and historian with various honors and awards. The latest was in July 2022, the National Artist Award for Literature and the Manila Critics Circle National Book Development Board Award for Best Book of Poetry in English, When Bridges Are Down, Mountains Too Far. In 2009, he received Italy's Premio Ferronia for his poetry translated into Italian, later published as a bilingual edition, Where No Words Break. The Light in One's Blood is his 12th poetry collection, and Past Mountain Dreaming, his 9th collection of essays. He has 2 collections of short stories, Orion's Belt and The Makeshift Sun, Stories and Poems. He is also known for his 4-volume historical anthology of Filipino poetry from, rather than in, English, spanning 1905 to the 1990s. Man of Earth, Native Clearing, A Habit of Shores, and its 2-volume sequel, The Achieve of the Mastery, and the 6-volume historical anthology of Filipino short stories from English, from 1956 to 2008. He obtained his PhD in English at the University of Chicago in 1970 through a Rockefeller Fellowship, and continues since 1963 to teach at the UP and serve in various committees, where he has also served as Secretary of the University, Vice President for Academic Affairs, and Director of the UP Creative Writing Center, which is now the Likhaan Institute of Creative Writing. Let us welcome the voice of Dr. Gemino Abad.
Thank you. I would begin by saying a country's literature is her people's memory, and a country is only as strong as her people's memory. But what is reality? Our reality, what we call our world, is evermore only our human reality. Only each human being's consciousness of what is real, what is true, what is right, what is just. We have no ready access to any consciousness other than our own. And of course, other human beings who speak to us or write. A cat or a dog sense or consciousness of its world, its environment, is its own. We can only imagine it as in fantasy. Each one's consciousness is also called our psyche, our mind, thought, and our heart, feeling. In Greek, psyche means breath, principle of life, life, soul. Thus, it may well be that our world, what we call our reality, is not so much a valley of tears as, says the poet John Keats, the vale of soul making. In our own science, chaos theory, reality is one whole, universe, one universe. From Latin, unum, one, and versus vertere, turning, changing, becoming, evolving. All nature, animate or inanimate, is ever evolving, ever changing reality. So, we are immersed in mystery. From Greek, mysterium, mystes, initiate. The day one is born, one is initiated into mystery. We never cease to wonder and observe, ask and examine, evaluate, judge, believe. What we call our world is only our experience of it, either objective, factual, or subjective, personal. All our knowing in the sciences and the humanities is only our quest for meaning, for truth in our experience of the world, of nature. Where there are no questions, the quest stalls or ceases. What is language? The word language is from old French lang, the tongue, organ of speech and taste. It is as though with words and words we would savor the experience of living our life. Language is our imagination's finest invention. Language was found within our own consciousness of our own world, our own human reality. Without language, we would have no memory, no culture, no civilization, no history. Language and imagination are one, and memory is imagination's heartland. As Eduardo Galeano says in the Book of Embraces, recordar, to remember, from Latin recordes, to pass back through the heart. Since our words are only concepts, abstractions, our words are translations of what the mind perceives, what the heart feels. We need to imagine what the words express. To think well is to imagine well. The word evokes an image, the image lights up its meaning. The imagination makes real to the mind what the mind sees or intuits in reality. Reality, capital R. Our words sound and translate our sense or consciousness, our mind's thought, our heart's feeling. If the writer has a vigorous sense of his language, whether that is English or Tagalog, he may even fathom or delve into the depth of his own thought and feeling. Thus, his words would conspire or breathe together, as it were, to compose his work as one whole. Its subject or theme, Tagalog paksa, is an experience as lived as imagined, or as imagined as lived. Its subject, what I just defined as subject, would have both meaning, Tagalog 𝗍𝗍, and soul, or meaningfulness. In Tagalog, diwa. When you translate a poem or short story from Tagalog into English, or vice versa, you would be ferrying across, that's translation, you would be ferrying across a void of meaninglessness, both the 𝗍𝗍 and the diwa, from one to the other language. Any literary work, to be a classic, has to have, for most of its readers, a certain depth of soul, or diwa. Last, what is poetry? The word poem is from Greek poiein, to make or create. Thus, poem or poetry is a generic term for any literary creative work. whether that is fiction, poem, play, or essay, sometimes called creative non-fiction. In the art of writing, where language is the muse and imagination the spirit guide, the sense for language is the basic poetic creative sense, which grows stronger in one's practice of writing and one's practice of close reading. In the poems making, whatever it is, story or poem or play, in the poems making, the poet, the writer, has first to imagine well the experience so that the poem's words altogether would make the experience come alive also in his own imagination. Thenceforth, the experience may well come alive also in the poem's reader's imagination. Thus, the poem, remember, the poem is short story, play, is the real. Because what you imagine well, you create, you make real. I have 5 minutes. Without imagination, there is no thinking or intuition beyond concept. Immanuel Kant says, concepts without intuition are empty. Intuitions without concept, blind. Perhaps all knowing is intuitive. If so, then concept, which translates into language, is what intuition may bear. It may also be that concept is at the heart of language and intuition at the core of concept. Nor mouth had, nor mind express what heart heard of goes guess, says Gerard Manley Hopkins. Conclusion. To speak or to write is to affirm what one's own spirit or consciousness tells one. We are our words, and all our words speak truth. A rose is a rose is a rose, says the poet Gertrude Stein. Honor in any language is honor. Corruption in government is corruption in any language. Only the liar abuses, wastes, and corrupts language, and so degrades his own nature as a human being, and deceives himself and offers and others as well. So, if the nature is language, if the nature of language, our invention, is truth-saying, our nature as human is truth-seeking. The care for words is care of light. The authentic human is the man of his word, the woman of her word. In our world, our reality, the word is our way, our truth, our life. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Abad, for that declaration of love for language, etymology, and for demonstrating the poetry in everything, even a lecture, and the reminder that a country is only as strong as its people's memory. So if you have any questions for Dr. Abad, you may ask them later, not the conclusion of all the 4 lectures, or if you would like to ask for his autograph later. Yeah. So let's move on to the second lecture of our series. Ito naman si Dr. Romulo Baquiran. na nakapaglathala na ng mga libro, mga Tula ng Paglusong noong 1992, Onyx 2003, Kung Nanaisin noong 2009, Sagad sa Buto noong 2011, Hiwatig noong 2015, Ibig 2017, at 𝗦𝗊𝗶𝗰𝗶𝘃 noong 2021. Isa siyang guro ng malikhaing pagsulat at panitikan sa Kolehiyo ng Arte at Literatura, University of the Philippines, Tariman, Quezon City. Narito po si Dr. Romulo Baquiran.
Magandang hapon. Meron akong slide presentation. Ayun. Nung binigay ni director ng workshop ang topic, parang masyado nga malalim, ano kaya magandang paksa. And then, pinagdugtong-dugtong pa lang yung pegs, no? Literature muna, and then papunta sa memory, and then truth, ano? Parang, nung tinitignan ko yung paksa, parang merong swak, parang bagay na paksa. At napili ko nga itong Totoong Gunita at Aksiyon sa Aking Henerasyon, no? Hulagway o Image ng Kamulatan at Pakikiisa ni Kerima, Lorena, Tariman. Parang yung nakita ko talaga ang bagay doon sa daloy ng mga paksang inassign. No? So, parang gagawin ko ay parang book review, but at the same time, life review na rin kasi may mga puwersa na nagsasabing hindi si Kerima ay hindi parang tinawag siyang terorista. So parang ito ay pagtingin kung totoo ba yun. Ano? So truth seeking din. Ano? So si Kerima ay naging estudyante ko noon, pero hindi kami makapag-usap kasi parang tahimik siya sa klase. At saka yung parang meron siyang sariling estilo ng pagtula, ano? Kasi formalista yung tinuturo ko, para ayaw niya, no? So, pero nagsubmit lang naman siya, ano? At okay naman, ano? Pumasa naman, ano? Pero yun, independent na siya mula galing kasi siya ng Philippine High School for the Arts, nakapag-aral na. So, ayun, ano? At siguro ay abala siya nung mga panahon na yun, ano? Late 90s. Ayun, 1979 to 2021, ano lang siya, 42 years old, ano? Yung kanyang buong buhay, no? May aklat siya, no? Parang nakikita ko rito kasi yung memorya niya parang gustong burahin, pero merong anyo naman paano ito magpapatuloy, ano? Kasi parang yung sinulat niyang mga tula, ito na yung tatak na ito ay magpapatuloy, nasaan yun ng isang tula, at ang mga tula at nasaan yun ng libro, at ang pagbasa naman, alam nyo na, ay merong direktang malapitang ugnayan, yung aklat na sinisimbolo ng akda ni Kerima, at ang pagbasa, ang akto ng pagbasa ay isang pagbabalik sa kanyang karanasan, sa kanyang kronika, at sa kanyang pagkamulat na dinaanan. Nakatala dito sa kanyang 500-page book na nalathala nung last year, no? Ng Gantala Press. Ano ba nilalaman nitong gunita ni Kerima, no? Sisilipin natin ng mabilisan. Siguro parang makikita ko ano yung transformation niya, yung pagbabago mula sa estudyante hanggang sa desisyon niyang sumali doon sa Kilusan, no? Para proseso yon, and then tatlong yugto lamang, pero malakas na mga pagbabago na transformasyon. Kasi parang paglaban nito doon sa pagtawag sa kanya bilang terorista, titignan mo naman yung kanyang sinulat ay hinding-hindi. So ito yung pagtingin sa memorya sa gunita bilang katotohanan. Meron konting introduction siguro tungkol sa tula. Merong isang makata noon na si Jess Santiago na parang 1977 niya ito sinulat. Parang nalulungkot yung makata. Ang sabi ay nais kong likumin ng mga alabok. Tuguan ang aking tinig sapagkat sugatan ng mga aninong dumadalaw sa Gunita. Anino ng mga Maria Lorena, anino ng mga Emmanuel, anino ng mga Valerio, anino ng mga manlalakbay na hinating gabi. Ay hindi pa sinisilang si Lorena noon, pero yung namesake niya, si Maria Lorena Barros, ay nariyan na yung pangalan na yun. So parang merong, yun sa tula ay merong tawag dito, premonition o pagbabadya, ano? Hindi ko alam kung ipinangalan ni Pablo ang kanyang anak kay Maria Lorena Barros, pero gusto ko isipin. So yun, parang mayroong introduction, ano? Kasi ito, persona sa tula ay nagluluksa, ay may mga nabuwal sa dilim ng mga kabataan, na nakakatulad ni Lorena, no? So, noong 1997, ano pa lang siya, 18, pero ganito na siya magsulat, ano? Pag-aari ko ang aking sarili, may pagpapasya talaga, no? Ako ang magpapasya kapag pinili ko at pinag-isipan ang susunod kong mga hakbang. Pipiliin ko kayang umalis sa eskwela o kaya mamawis pa ng dugo sa akademya para maibenta naman pati thesis ko para naman sa MNC na ako magtrabaho. MNC, Multinational Corporation. Parang ito ay merong, meron pa yatang part pa yata ito. No? Part 2 sabi ay, at kapag pinili ko na hindi matanggap kahit kontraktual sa paggawaan, doon lang ba mawawala ang alinlangan na ibahagi ang sarili sa sambayanan? Doon sa linyang kapag pinili ko na hindi matanggap, yan ay yung statement na yon ay parang may desisyon na kahit hindi pa siya nag-a-apply ay tatanggihan niya na yung maging bahagi ng kapitalistang sistema, no? So 1997, 18 years old siya, gusto na niyang sumali, ibahagi ang sarili sa sambayanan, no? Ito yung first part ng kanyang paglalakbay, no? Ayun, 2000, 3 years later, mas sigurado na siya, no? Para kasi yung buong libro, kronika ng lahat ng kanyang karanasan mula ng estudyante siya hanggang sa kadaludaluhan, ano? Nagpunta siya o lumubog sa, hindi ko alam kung sa Isabelo to o sa Mindanao, na meron siyang mga kausap na mag-asawang magsasaka na naglilingkod doon sa asyenda, at dinidescribe lang naman niya, no? na 3 stanza ito, salaysay at kasaysayan. Doon pa lang sa title ay malay na malay ang makata kung ano ang kanyang dinadanas. Ano, mula sa eskwelahan, napunta na siya sa kanayunan, at ito ang kanyang nasaksihan, o ngayon ay memorya na lamang, pero nung panahon na yon ay aktual na naroon siya, ano? Silaki ng bawang ang mga kalyo ng lakay, mukhang Ilocos ito, no? North. Isa sa bawat sakong, makapal na balat sa ilalim ng maninipis na kamisetang patong-patong, iba't ibang kulay na kupas, etiketang tastas, at tatak pangalan ng pestisidyong nagbaon sa kanya sa utang ng matuyo ang panahon. Ang anino ng ilong, itim sa kayumangging mukhang nagugusot sa pagsasalaysay, kumakaway na apoy sa aming pagitan, sinasabi ni Manang na nasugat ng matindi ang kanyang mga kamay nang pilitin niyang isalba ang tanim na binaha. Kailangan niyang hugasan ang kabuhayan sa sapa. Wala pa mang tagtuyot, wala pa mang bagyo, sugat na ang kamay, malaki na ang kalyo. Ano ang nalalaman natin sa pagsasamantala? Sino ang nagpunla ng mangangamkam at sugapa? Saan nakaugat, kailan mahuhugot ang pang-abuso? Anong klaseng kalamidad itong malapidalismo? No, so yung eksenang yun, yung pagkakita niya doon sa mag-asawang magsasaka, trabahador doon sa plantasyon, at nag-focus siya very specific doon sa kalyo nung lakay o nung matanda na sinlaki na siguro ng bayabas sa kalalakad at kakaalaga dun sa taniman, dun sa asyenda. Pero makikita mo talaga yung larawan ng kahirapan. Parang baga nag-close up na husto si Kerima dito sa kanyang danas sa kanayunan at nakita niya mismo kung ano yung hinahanap niyang dapat gawin, ano, at kung sino yung may kasalanan, ano, sino ang may gawa nitong kahirapan ito. So parang nakikita niyo yung ibabaw pero naaano niya din na sisisid ang kailaliman at ugat ng mga dapat unawain at dapat kabakahin. You know? So from point 1 to point 2, ang laki talaga nung transformation niya. Talagang naintindihan niya ang lipunang Filipino. Ayun nga. Tapos pagkaraan noon, marami siyang tula na halos ganito yung mga paulit-ulit at napagdidiin sa mga nangyayari sa lipunan, ano, mga magsasaka, mga lumad ay kanyang nakasalamuha at nakilala. Tapos hanggang noon ngang 2021 Agosto ay nangyari yung pagpaslang sa kanya, ano. At ayun, may propaganda sa SOCMED ang kabilang puwersa at sinasabi na siya ay sinungaling, terorista, pero kung babasahin niyo yung kanyang kanyang libro ay kabaligtaran. Ito ay pagtitestimonya ng naging papel ng isang artista na piniling isabuhay ang kanyang nasa kaisip lamang na pagkamulat at talagang nakiisa sa kanyang bayan, ano. Merong ginawang tula si Bomen na sa palagay ko ay bagay na bagay dito sa naratibo at buhay na dinanas ni Kerima, no. Pagkilala, sinulat ni Bomen Guillermo, pinutol nila ang iyong hininga upang madugtungan ang sa kanila. Pinaikli nila ang iyong buhay upang maging magpakailanman ang sa kanila. Mahalaga sa kanila dahil ikay namatay. Mahalaga sa amin dahil ikay nabuhay. Salamat po.
Thank you, Sir Joey, for yung tribute na ito para sa isang poet, si Kerima Tariman. I believe we can find some of her works sa Mount Cloud Bookshop, if I'm not mistaken, sa Aking Henerasyon. So, ayun. Dako naman tayo sa susunod nating lecturer. Isa siya sa mga writing fellows in this year's UP National Writers Workshop. Si Kenneth Roland Guda ay isang manunulat, editor, mananaliksik at mamahayag. Kumuha ng kursong malikhaing pagsulat sa Filipino sa UP Diliman. Naging features editor din siya ng pahayagang pang-campus na Philippine Collegian. Halos 2 dekada siyang manunulat, litratista, graphics designer at editor ng alternatibong payagang Pinoy Weekly noong 2002 hanggang 2021 bago naging bahagi ng Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism noong April 2021 hanggang December 2022. Kasalukuyan siyang freelance journalist at nagsusulat ng in-depth, investigatibo at naratibong mga ulat tungkol sa mga isyong pangpolitika, pang-ekonomiya, pangkalikasan at pangkultura. Noong 2017, nagwagi sa kategoryang journalism ng National Book Awards ang kanyang librong Periodismo sa Bingit, mga naratibong ulat sa panahon ng digmaan at krisis na inilathala ng UP Press. Kinilala rin ng kanyang ulat kasama si Soliman Santos bilang finalist sa Jaime Ong Pin Awards for Excellence in Journalism noong 2008. Narito po si Mr. Kenneth Guda.
Magandang hapon po. Pwede pong simulan ng slides. Okay. Next slide. Okay. Sunod na slide na po. Para sa marami sa atin ngayon, group chats na ang forma ng komunikasyon sa pagitan ng mga kaibigan, kakilala, kamag-anak at iba pa. At kaugnay nito, social media naman sa malaking bahagi ang forma ng pakikihalubilo natin sa publiko. Sa kaso ko, isa sa pinaka-aktibong group chat ko ang isang GC o group chat ng magkakaibigan mula sa UP Diliman. Dito, panapanahong nagtatalakayan kami sa mga pampulitikang issue. Pero like-minded kami, kaya madalang ang mga debate. Next slide. Okay. Pero panapanahon ding lumalabas kami sa GC na ito. Halimbawa, yung isa sa amin nasangkot kamakailan sa isang matindi at toxic na sagutan kay Daryl Yap. Kilala niyo si Daryl Yap? Hindi? Buti pa kayo. Si Yap, syempre, yung pamoso o impamoso na pro-Marcos na social media personality at ngayon filmmaker ng mga Marcos. Hindi ko nababanggitin kung tungkol saan ang pinag-awayan nila ni Daryl Yap dahil baka matukoy na siya. Ano't ano man, may imagine nyo na kung gaano ka-toxic ang ganitong debate na pinasok niya. May imagine nyo na kung paano kinuyog ang kaibigan ko ng supporters si Daryl Yap at ng mga Marcos. Mula sa comments sa kanyang personal na mga larawan at post sa Facebook, sa Twitter, sa Instagram, hanggang sa personal messages. So, minamessage pa siya personally. Ganun ka-intense yung galit sa kanya. Wala silang patawad. Buti na lang, deadma lang at di masyado apektado yung kaibigan ko. Kakatuwa dahil siya rin itong kaibigan ko na nag-coin ng isang termino na ginagamit lang namin sa GC na ito. Ginagamit tuwing may isa sa amin ang napapapatol sa mga kontrobersyal na mga usap-usapan sa Facebook o Twitter. Hindi ko na kailangang ipaliwanag sa inyo sa karamihan sa atin dahil active naman sa social media ay assume, no? Alam niyo naman na isang malaking burak ang social media. Kung kaya, ang tawag niya rito ay Pasig River. So kung nakarating na kayo sa Pasig River, ngayon, isa na siyang malaking maruming lugar. So next slide. Quote, "Napapasig River ka na naman," quote unquote, sabi niya. Ibig sabihin, napapakomento na naman ako. Kinahiligan ko pa naman ito. Bawag matulog, bago magtrabaho, habang nasa kubeta. Minsan, magkokomento na lang ako randomly sa isang post o istorya sa media. Sasagutin ng mga taga-suporta ng mga Duterte o Marcos o sino mang palagay ko ay dapat sagutin. Walang kapararakan ng mga debateng ito. Ganito. Minsan, sineseryoso ko. Pinakikitaan ko ng datos, ng link sa isang reputableng source. Argumento na may katuturan at rasyonal. Pero gaano man kahusay ang mga sagot ko, tila hindi ako nananalo sa mga debateng ito. Magbabato ka ng datos, sasagutin ka lang ng, basta BBM pa rin kami, BBM forever. Magpipresenta ka ng anumang argumentong lohikal, sasabihan ka lang ng, iyak na lang mga pinklawan. Iyak 𝗦𝗍𝗶𝗃. Iyak. Tapos ang debate. May-imagine ko rin na marami ang katulad ko. Marami sa atin, ganun din. Sa pagsabay-sabayin man kami, i-multiply ng milyon, hindi umubra. Ang ending, 31 milyong Pilipino ang bumoto kay Marcos Jr. Sad. Siguro, umaasa sila sa pagbabalik ng golden era. Nabalita naman natin yan. Marahil, nananampalataya sila sa panahong may papamudmud na sa madla yung talya na gold at last. Pero ang tiyak ako, naniniwala silang karapat-dapat ang mga Marcos na makabalik sa poder. Yun ang paniniwala nila. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Tama ba? Sorry. Ay, sorry. Yung una po. Yan. Hindi. Okay? Yan. Okay. So, yung sa kaliwa, si Tsar Nicholas II at yung pamilyang Romanov. Yung huling monarkiya sa Russia bago yung Russian Revolution. Alam ba niyo kung nangyari sa pamilyang yan? At nakita ko yung picture or painting siguro yan, no, nung Made in Malacanang ni Daryl Yap. At naalala ko yung picture na ito ng mga Romanov. At ayoko mang isipin, biglang pumasok sa isip ko, what if mangyari din sa mga Marcos, ang nangyari sa mga Romanov. Hindi ko ilan yan. What if lang naman. Okay. Higit pa rito, higit pa doon sa paniniwala na karapat-dapat yung mga Marcos sa poder, paniniwala nilang itinatadhana ang mga Marcos na maging monarchs o monarko ng Malacanang. Tila divine right ni Bongbong na makaupo sa poder. Kung napanood yung Made in Malacanang, sa Made in Malacanang ni Daryl Yap, ito ang nakita kong tema. Inapi ang mga Marcos dahil pinatalsik sila ng pag-aalsa sa EDSA. Hindi na usapin kung nararapat ba sila o hindi na patalsikin, o kung may karapatan man ng mga mamamayan na magpatalsik ng isang hari in the first place. Parang ang assumption, katulad ni Julius Caesar, honorable si Marcos, pero sinaksak siya sa likod ng mga dating tauhan niya. Inapi ang mga Marcos at dapat makabalik sila sa pwestong naitadhana sa kanila. Next slide. Yan din yung isang parang may kaibigan akong artist na kinumpara niya yung portrait ni Elizabeth II yata to at ni Imelda na parang very similar yung poses. So, ganun talaga yung iconography or imagery na gustong ipakita ng mga Marcos noon hanggang ngayon. So, tanggapin man natin o hindi, napakalakas ng mitong ito sa utak ng maraming Pilipino. Tanggapin man natin o hindi, ito pa ngayon ang inabot ng kamalayan ng marami sa atin. Hindi ako nagsasara sa posibilidad na dinaya ni Marcos ang eleksyon. Pero ang kitang-kita natin ngayon, marami sa atin ang naniniwala sa mitong ito ng mga Marcos. Next slide. Bilang mamamahayag, naging privy ako ng kaunti sa reaksyon ng media sa bansa sa pagkakahalal kay Marcos. Marami ang nanlumo, ang natakot, nag-isip na magpalit ng karera. Mga ibang bayan, manahimik na lang, maging ordinary citizen. Kasi ba naman, kung matatandaan natin, yung media, yung kalayaan sa pamamahayag, ang isa sa pinakaunang inatake ng batas militar ng ama ni Junior. Pero bilang institusyon, ang nakita kong response ng media ay commitment na mag-fact check sa mga pahayag at claims ng rehimen at mga taga-suporta nito. So hindi masama yun, no? Nangako yung mga mamahayag, ipagpapatuloy namin ang paglaban para sa katotohanan. Hindi namin papalampasin ang pinalulutang ng mga kasinungalingan. Next slide. Mahalaga yung fact-checking. Mahalagang mayroong content sa internet na maaaring gamitin at ituro tuwing may nakakasalubong tayong nagpapakalat ng kasinungalingan. Pero sapat na kaya ito? Para sa akin, hindi. Ang lagi kong naiisip, yung karanasan ko sa Pasig River. Ang pagtampisaw ko sa burak ng social media para lang mabigo. Basta, kay Marcos kami. NPA kayo, mga pinklawan, mamatay na kayo. Next slide. Noong Enero, may nainkwentro akong artikulo sa blog ng London School of Economics and Political Science na pinamagatang Facts Don't Change Minds. Social Networks, Group Dialogue, and Stories Do ni 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. Kaugnay ito ng attitude ng mga siyentipiko na mag-stick to the facts tuwing ipinapaliwanag sa publiko ang kanilang mga nasasaliksik o nadidiskubre. Ang argumento ni 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, batay sa maraming pag-aaral na binasa niya, ay ito. Humans are storytelling creatures, and stories are often fun, engaging, and emotionally powerful. Research in neuroscience has found that oral storytelling triggers different cognitive processes than facts, thus reducing the incidence of negative thoughts and feelings that are often generated when presented with new and challenging information. Wala na yata dyan. Research also shows that we are better at remembering stories with context and narrative as compared to facts. And this quick recall can support effective decision-making in high-stakes situations. Next slide. Okay. Sinabi rin niya na batay sa maraming pag-aaral, mahirap talagang manghikayat sa tao na mag-isip ng tama. Think correctly. Lalo na sa mga kontrobersyal na mga issue. Sabi uli ni Tumi, there is much exciting new work that points to the potential of foregoing our obsession with getting people to think differently, to focus more on getting people to act differently. This research suggests that instead of targeting individual attitude change, seeking to change physical and social environments to support behavioral changes may in turn lead to shifts down the road in beliefs, identities, and future actions. In other words, rather than changing minds to change behaviors, this body of scholarship suggests that we should change behaviors to change minds. For example, increasing accessibility and comfort of public transportation options may result in fewer driving miles, and increase public support for shifting subsidies to from highways to rail. Baguhin natin ang mga instruktuhang panlipunan at mababago ang kaisipan. Ibigay ang batayang pangangailangan ng mga mamamayan at mababago ang pag-iisip nila. Siyempre, tall order ito. Siyempre, hindi na usapin ng eleksyon ito. Pero palagay ko, at sinasabi naman ito ng artikulo ni Tumi, ang kailangan din natin gawin ay i-deploy sa masa ang ating mga kwento. Hindi lang datos, kundi mga kwento ng ating kahirapan, ng ating paglaban, ng ating ipinaglalabang kinabukasan. At ang mga formang iti-take nito, palagay ko ay dapat nakaayon sa mga formang pamilyar sa nakararami. Mga kwentong oral sa kanayunan at mga liblib, hanggang sa TikTok at social media sa mga lungsod. Mula sa traditional na mga forma ng pagsusulat at pagtatanghal, hanggang sa pinakabago at pinakapopular. Kumbaga, hindi na lang tayo magtatampisaw sa nakamamatay na burak ng Pasig River. Papalitan na natin ang burak ng malinis na tubig ng mga naratibong makatotohanan, makabuluhan, at nagtatalakay sa mga posibilidad ng maalwang kinabukasan. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Sir Kenneth, for the reminder. Yung inungkat niya, the fraughtness of memory, myth-making, yung role ng writer sa pagbuo ng mga mitong ito at sa pagwasak din ng mga mitong ito. Maybe I have more questions on that later after the conclusion of all these lectures. So ayan, maraming salamat po Sir Kenneth. Dako naman po tayo sa ating fourth speaker. Last but not the least, si Professor Junley Lazaga. He writes in Ilocano, Filipino, and English, and teaches here at UP Baguio, where he holds the distinction as the first to have been conferred by the University of the Philippines the title of University Artist. He is a founding member of the Ugbo Cordillera Writers and past president of the Baguio Writers Group. And he is currently with the board of the Philippine Center of International Pen. Here is Professor Junley Lazaga.
Ang pangangalagaan na po, kinararangal kong makasama kayong lahat, national artist, Limi Abad, distinguished professors, dear students, colleagues. In this sharing, I wish to contribute to the idea that the works of Isabelo de los Reyes, my fellow Ilocano, constitute a literatura akas lagip, akas kinapudno, literature as memory, as truth. To illustrate this, I aim to reintroduce Isabelo de los Reyes by revisiting a few works, in fact several works, but I will skip my discussion para diretso tayo dun sa point. But the point is that this secondary literature install the person and his legacy at the foundation of our national consciousness and national history as a Filipino people. The literature of Isabelo de los Reyes is considered as among the factors behind the emergence of a Philippine and Filipino public that was formed in the late 19th century towards the early 20th century. His activities, a great deal of which were put into and conveyed through writing, enabled the broadening of a public sphere that had become distinctly Filipino and national, while at the same time local, specifically Ilocano. At the same time, the activities may well be considered an originator of revolutionary tradition in Ilocano letters. Nakakasurpresa ba yun? Meron naman kaming tradisyon ng revolusyonarong pagsulat sa Ilocano. This body of work of De Los Reyes constitutes a body of knowledge that is a significant part of Filipino history, culture, society, and identity in general, and in particular Philippine journalism, literature, translation, including Bible translation, book production and publishing, labor movement and unionism, independent church establishment, and government service. Areas much more beyond folklore, but in the work of Isabelo de los Reyes, coalesced with folklore, for which reason he was named Father of Philippine Folklore. The popular accolade was first accorded to him by Pedro Paterno through the Diario de Manila in 1886. Yet the title Father of Philippine Folklore, according to William Henry Scott in 1985, seems strangely inappropriate for a man who did not raise up a family of younger folklorists to follow in his footsteps. In 1985, Scott argued that probably the title First Filipino Folklorist would be more appropriate for the young Isabelo. And as a matter of fact, the further point may be made that no second Filipino folklorist had appeared up to the time of his death in 1938. Scott continued to explain that perhaps a still more appropriate title for Isabelo would be First Filipinologist, for his interest and expertise in anything Philippine or Filipino. And these were not limited even to the broad boundaries of folklore. Some 30 years later, these are re-articulated by eminent scholar Resil Mujares. In his article published in the Cordillera Review in 2009, Mujares expressed to dwell on the genealogy of Isabelo's act, to see it in relation to its connection to outside scholarship, specifically the rise of folklore studies in Spain, and more important, its radical value in terms of the formation of his time and hours of a national scholarship. In 2013, the title of the article became the National Artist's Book title published by Anvil, Isabelo's Archive. Let's skip that. He was also called the Enlightened. Isabelo was also called the Enlightened Indio. Also considered by Scott as the first Filipino nationalist, and I consider him as a provinciano nationalist or an Ilocano Filipino. Bakit importante yung local ethnic identity lagi para sa mga Ilocano? Para higit na maramdaman at maging makabuluhan ang pagiging Pilipino o pagiging makabansa at national. In 1985, William Henry Scott dedicated 3 chapters in his book Cracks in the Parchment Curtain on Isabel de los Reyes. In 2006, an entire chapter in the Brains of the Nation by national artist Resil Mujares. Okay. And several other secondary literature by Megan Thomas, William Henry Scott, Delfin Tolentino, Christopher Cerda, Ramon Guillermo, Romel Rodriguez, Ayo Larbal, journalist and Professor Maria Josa Labiste, Leslie Liwanag, and Michael Charlson Chua. Earlier, Leslie Liwanag completed her dissertation on Isabelo de los Reyes in De La Salle University. An undergraduate thesis in history also by Luis Benvenido Foronda, dedicated to the historico-cultural writings of Isabelo de los Reyes and the formation of Ilocano identity. Chancellor Clement Camposano also had an article. A Russian scholar, Vadim Dani, published an article considered the first in Russian scholarship to write about Isabelo de los Reyes, a Filipino scholar. Dr. Francis Yalogo of the Ateneo de Manila University, and another foreign scholar, Adrian Herman. So let's look at the primary text of Isabelo de los Reyes. The El Ilocano, considered the first newspaper published by an Indio in bilingual Spanish and Ilocano. Isabelo's propaganda work was executed in the very reason for the efforts put into publishing El Ilocano and in the writing of the individual articles that appeared within the pages of the fortnightly paper. Introduced in the masthead of the paper itself as a reading in many good things to be learned can be read, and consisting news and many others. On the whole, the purpose of El Ilocano was to bring science to the common people, such that the paper contained articles written in Ilocano and Spanish on Ilocos history, geography, law, letters from the Pope and church hierarchy, agriculture, practical pieces of advice, government, mathematics, and poetry, as well as a section dedicated to women. A survey of the first issue would reveal some 10 major articles in various areas of interest, printed on the 8 pages of the paper's number 1, issue dated June 28, 1889. So ito yung ginawa kong table of contents. Makikita ninyo the definition of the objectives of the paper, a section on the life of the new bishop in Ilocos, tungkol sa batas, penal code, mga leksyon tungkol sa pagtatanim at agrikultura, ang Historia de Ilocos, aralin sa pagbibilang, arithmetic, pagsasaka, balita, sa lagay ng mundo. So, the very first Filipino ilustrado and Indio to do this, to take his advocacies in the mainstream media of his time. And the conservation, perhaps, of his folklore work may be considered in the El Folklore Filipino, the 2 volumes El Folklore Filipino, which was also part of the Exposición Filipinas in Madrid in 1887 and was displayed at the Biblioteca de la España Oriental. A further look into the issues of the paper that ran for 3 years from June 28, 1889 to 1891 reveals articles on matters such as the animal epidemic that apparently was pervasive in the day in 1889. As shown in the articles, Angol Dagiti Animales. The Ilocano folk epic Biak ni Lamang was also serialized in El Ilocano. The Historia de Ilocos was first published in that newspaper, and separately El Folklore Filipino, and over 30 poetry and verses in Spanish and Ilocano. Many of the Ilocano poems are translations from European pieces. Hindi ito nabanggit ni Scott noon, maybe because these were written in Ilocano and Scott had no access to the language. The curation of articles that got into El Ilocano, much like the rest of the endeavors passionately enacted and work engaged in by Isabelo de los Reyes, is reflective of how 𝗦ci𝗰𝗶𝗶 regarded the former as the country's most unorthodox intellectual. To see for ourselves, we must get the light of our discovery directly from his writings. So thank you to William Henry Scott and 𝗦ci𝗰𝗶𝗶. The works of Isabelo de los Reyes, mostly written in Spanish, have been introduced to Philippine public through academia after accounts by earlier bibliophiles and scholars, including Spanish Filipinologist Wenceslao Retana. As we are more fortunate now for having the opportunity to read the primary text via their translations and see for ourselves the value of these works that Scott and Mojares had earlier eloquently retold to us. So the El Folklore Filipino has a 2010 reprint by the University of the Philippines Press, translated in English by Salud Dizon and former colleague Maria Eleonora Imson. The El Tinggian, also translated by what I call the Isabelo de los Reyes translator, Eleanor Imson herself. History of Ilocos also published by the UP Press. Memorya ng Madamdaming Alaala ni Isabelo de los Reyes, translated by Professor Alcantara. Ang Diablo sa Pilipinas, translated into English by Benedict Anderson, Carlos Galache, and Ramon Guillermo. I was also fortunate to be in a project to translate into Ilocano to bring back the knowledge to the Ilocano people para alam ng mga Ilocano, the common readers of the language, anong pinagsasabi nitong Isabelo de los Reyes na kababayan nila na nagsabi noong 1889 na mga Ilocano ay mapaniwala, gullible. So, sana mabasa nila. To end, let me just link it to our topic. What then do we learn from the life and works of Isabelo de los Reyes? Unpredictability, which is an antithesis of mystification as formulaic. Trickster, which is an antithesis to the tradition bound. By communicating with the people, the locality, Isabelo helped in the emergence of a public at both the levels of the local Ilocano and the national Filipino. He created and maintained a channel of communication with the nation and the locality, and thus the formation of Philippine nation that is inextricable from the local and ethnic identity, such as that of the Ilocano. By maintaining a platform of public discourse, critical consciousness is ensured. Such was the role of his publications such as El Ilocano, at kaya siya nakulong ng ilang beses sa Espanya at sa Bilibid. With the kind of writing that he published in El Ilocano and his other works, literature is to be redefined as that which ensures the education of the people, the enrichment of the mind, the ushering of the Filipino people as global citizens, and the chronicling of communal experience as truth. While sustaining the lives of myths embodied in popular narratives, he also made a way for news, facts, local and global, to circulate and be part of everyday culture and articulate local history no one before him had successfully done. In other words, he managed to have lamang on an ongoing epidemic in 1889 and Ilocos history, all at the same time in the pages of his newspaper. Let me end by presenting to you a Filipino translation of a verse piece in Ilocano published in August 8, 1890 issue of El Ilocano. The verse is labeled as the Lot Castilla, which gives an impression that it was translated or at least based from a Spanish text. The translation or recomposition in Ilocano is very much in keeping with the conventions of Ilocano poetry. Sabi niya, buhay ko pag naalala kita, naalala ko yaong nagwika, na ang nagmamahal ng totoo, di sila masusuklihan ng kahit ano. Sabi nila na pasakit ko at pasanin, wika nila ako'y mamamatay na rin. Ang mamamatay at di nila dadanasin, ang sakit na dahil sa iyo ay tatamasahin. Sana all malakas. Thank you.
Salamat Sir Junley sa itong pagpapakilala kay Isabelo de los Reyes at ang kanyang parang attunement to his ethnicity, his language, his province, and to his local folklore as his practice of nationalism. So ayun, that concludes our 4 lectures for this afternoon. Ang sarap pakinggan, no, itong mga different intersections and tangents on literature as memory as truth. I think we can start with our open forum. So if you want to ask a question, you just raise your hand and the mic will be given to you. So before we since wala pang nagtatanong, pwede siguro akong mag-umpisa, no? Sige. To our panelists, no, siguro we can start with must the writer also engage in myth making to counter the dominant myths that are in the mainstream right now. So yun yung unang tanong ko. Baka may mas maganda kayong tanong dyan, audience. So yun po muna. I think anyone from our panelists can answer. Ulitin ko po. Does the writer... Ay, sige po. My question is, should the writer also engage in myth making? Ano po, sir? Should the writer also engage in myth making in order to counter myths like Solid North or Taliano Gold or the myths that are propagated by the state? Yun po.
The important word there is should. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. The important word in the question is should. Oh no. The writer is free. The writer is free. The writer is always free to do what he wants to write. Yeah, so there is no should.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Any from the panelists or perhaps a related question from the audience? Ay, merong one of our tech persons, someone's asking a question here. Thank you.
Magandang hapon. Ako po si Ralph Fonte, fellow ng UP National Writers Workshop, the 62nd UP National Writers Workshop. Ang tanong ko po siguro, nakatuon kay Sir Jimmy, kay Sir Joey, pati kay Sir Junley, at siguro gusto ko talaga marinig yung sagot ni Sir Junley, no? Yung discussion natin as literature, as memory, as truth. Ang context ko po, ako po ay trabaho sa Palawan, at sa buong Palawan, bibihira ang may access sa Filipino literature. So we were discussing the power of literature as a repository of the national memory. But what I'd like to ask is, how is it possible for literature to act as memory if literature is primarily inaccessible to most of the people in our country? So my first question. My second question is, what are the current efforts that institutions such as UP Baguio or UP Diliman, what are these institutions currently doing in order to address this disconnect, no, between the capacity of literature to act as national memory and its inaccessibility to most of our population? So, yun po, maraming salamat in advance.
Hirap naman, pero papasubo ko na lang si Isabelo de los Reyes. Yung unang tanong, yung how, parang gobyerno dapat ang sasagot niyan. Sila. Pero in relation to Isabelo, parang ganun, no? We should, I think, sustain a tradition of revolutionary thought. Kasi ganun yung nakikita ko sa ginawa niya, no? Kung hindi ginagawa ng gobyerno, yung isang mamamayan ang will take it to the public, no? Whatever it takes, no? Nakulong siya, meron siyang kaunting kinita, bumili siya ng printing press para lang makapag-produce ng dyaryo. In fact, yung kanyang dyaryo ay, I think, single-handedly written yun. Marami lang mga pangalan, pero mga hindi totoong sa pseudonym, no? Tapos siya pa ang editor, siya pa ang publisher, no? Kaya napakadali na na i-identify siya at siya talagang may boses nito. But of course, that was the principle of the propaganda, no, to show that there are a lot of people working on the same advocacy. Hindi ko alam kung nasagot yung tanong, pero parang ganon. I think we should revisit, no, these people who left us with the legacy of revolutionary thought and tradition. Sinasabi ko ito at tingin ko alam ninyo, pero marami sa mga Ilocano siguro hindi alam na merong Isabelo de los Reyes at meron silang pag-uugatan ng ganitong uri ng tradisyon para hindi maging gullible lang sa kung anumang mito, no, and look at other things just like how he presented other things during his time.
It's not a matter of books. No? What is very important is how you read what you read. Yeah. No? That is a matter of education. Huh? It's a matter of education. Those of us who go to school when we were still very, very young, elementary, high school, and then college, no? Yeah. We learn how to read. Correct? Yeah. What do you mean by reading close? No? It's not just, you read not just to be entertained. Correct? If all you read are comics, fine. Yeah. But if that's all you read, to exaggerate, if that's all you read comics, you're a gunner. I'm exaggerating. How do you read well? Oh, that's the most important. Not books, how you read. Oh, okay.
Susubukan kong sagutin yan. Napakahirap na tanong paano makarating ang literatura kung wala namang librong access at paano yun ma-solve. National level yung tugon, no? Tapos systemic din yung problema, no? Ang una, yung sistema na edukasyon hindi na-encourage yung literature, hindi naman parang tawag dito, hindi naman priority itong pagbasa ng libro, lalo pa kung literatura. Tapos yun nga, natutuwa na tayong mga writers na ang isang edition ng libro ay 500, di pa mabenta, and lawak-lawak ng market, 100 million Filipinos. Kahit matouch mo lang yung 1 million dun, sana nakakatuwa na, no? Pero parang hirap-hirap isolve. Ano? Paano ba yun, saan mag-uumpisa, saan dadalhin itong problemang ito, no? Di ko rin yung alam yung sagot, pero sa palagay ko dahan-dahan na paano nga, ano, unang-una yung sistema ng edukasyon wala talaga sa kamalayan nila itong pagbasa ng literature. In fact, tinanggal pa nga talaga completely yung humanities track sa college, ano? So paano na? Ewan ko, parang dapat nga siguro merong isang superhero na gagawa na masolusyonan itong pambansang problema ito kung paano hindi lamang literature kundi mismo sa pagbabasa, no? Paano makakabasa yung kabataan ng literatura, ng agham, ng lahat na kakapagmulat kung mismo yung lipunan ay isang malaking balakid para gawin ito. Hindi ko alam, pero siguro dapat tayo unti-unti, ano, yung mga edukador, yung mga ay gumawa ng alternative na system, maliliitang gawain, at sana ito ay matawag dito kumalat, kasi gano'n naman nag-uumpisa ang kultura, di ba? One simple act, and then block by block, house by house, street by street, region by region, baka gano'n ang pwedeng mangyari, no? Para yung pangarap natin kumalat yung literatura ay mangyari.
Hindi yata ako tinatanong. Pero okay. Roommate. Tawag dyan. Naalala ko kasi yung kwento ng mga lumad sa isang lumad school na napuntahan ko, yung sa Lumpungan sa Lianga, Surigao del Sur. Nagulat ako, tinuturo si Shakespeare sa kanila. So, siguro, hindi ko alam kung paano tinuturo, pero nakwento sa akin. No? At nagulat ako na kailangan ba yun sa kanilang pang-araw-araw na buhay. At nagulat ako na nakakaabot ng isang lumad community si Shakespeare. At syempre, alam naman natin na universal naman yung mga tema ni Shakespeare. At yung ibang mga, lalo na yung mga lokal na mga pampanitikang produksyon, mga ilang mga tula ng mga Makata, nakakarating dun sa isang lumad school na hindi sanctioned ng gobyerno. So, yung lumad school na yun ay parang pinapatakbo ng isang NGO, non-profit na organization na tinaguyod ng both ng mga religious organizations, ng mga non-profit organizations, people's organizations, at ng mga lumad mismo. Dahil sila yung nag-demand na magtayo tayo ng sariling paaralan na matututunan namin yung mga bagay na hindi natin, kasi wala talagang paaralan sa lugar na yon. So, parang, palagi ko, syempre, yun nga sinasabi ni Professor na kailangan, nagobyerno talaga yung may responsibilidad. Pero may mga ganitong mga inisyatiba siguro na kailangan natin kilalanin at supportan at gawin din sa ibang mga settings, sa ibang mga communities na hindi supportado. Ang problema lang talaga ay, as far as I know, marami sa mga lumad schools na ito ay hindi na nagpa-function as schools, as regular schools dahil sa militarization at sa red tagging. Naging target sila ng. So, yun yung malungkot doon kung sino yung nagtataguyod ng ganitong mga initiatives ay sila pa yung inaatake. Malungkot.
Thank you, sir. I think we can entertain 2 more questions from the audience. Yes, sir.
Good evening or good afternoon to everybody. To the panelists. This is not specifically related to the subject matter, but anyway, I'm Mr. Lawagan. I'm a budding writer from Benguet with 5 novels published under my belt through the internet, because without the internet, I don't believe I'll be a published writer. So my first question is, as a seasoned writer, what are your best advice to a budding writer such as myself? That's my first question. Any one of you who are seasoned writer or novelist, because I'm still finding my voice. My first published book is about my younger brother who has autism. It is a novel. Secondly is non-fiction, which is the in-depth study of my brother's kind of autism. Third is a children's illustration book, The Boy Who Found Happiness. And then the other one is because I'm a Cordilleran, and I was attempting to write a Game of Thrones type of, which is very ambitious on my part, type of novel, fantasy novel, based on the Cordillera and Ibrots in general. And that relates to my second question. Because I made a survey online through through group chats and then in groups in Facebook, social media about the Igorots and the Igorot kingdom, that I will put some details that are fantasy, which is not really within the culture of the Igorots, because Igorots is not just one tribe. There are more than 400 plus sub-tribes. I myself, I'm an Ibaloy. And Ibaloy itself has 40 plus sub-tribes. We have Ipasdong, I am Inuntog, we have Ipasdong, we have Iowak. I even consulted the organization of Ibaloy there in Burnham. And then many had violent reactions. It's inaccurate. What if you will offend the culture of certain sub-tribe? What are you doing? Some of them, even the officers of certain organizations like the Buntok Association, the Sagada, because my father is half Sagada, I even researched there. And then the second question relating to that is, how can I go on with my book without offending the specific tribes or the subject matters, or should I go about it? Because what I want to do is to represent Igorot in not just in the Philippines, in a worldwide space, I should say. Or should I go with it? Should I go with it and to hell with them? I am a writer. I am free to do whatever I want without any backlash from them. Because I observe if there's an issue about the wearing of the loincloth. There's a theater in Manila, and then many were getting angry to the comments. There even somebody who said that I'm an idiot. There's even somebody who messaged me that drop dead. You're not a true Igorot. They told me for putting my own idea to reach wider audience. Those sort of things. That's all, sir. My first and second question. Thank you, sir.
Siguro to unpack that question is something directed to starting emerging writers po.
Basically, the question is, correct me if I'm mistaken, the question is, what is my advice, so to speak, to a budding writer? Is that the question? Huh? The one who just spoke. That is the question. Okay. Yeah. The writer, any writer, can write what he wants to write about. Okay? So what is my advice? He must have a certain mastery of his language, whether it is English or Filipino or Ilocano. Okay? What that means is he has a strong sense for language. What do you mean by that? A sense for language. That is the basic poetic sense. And by poetic, I mean creative. Because no matter what you're writing, short story or creative non-fiction or essay or play or what's the other one? Fiction, no? You have to have a strong sense of your language. And what do you mean by that? What do I mean by that? For example, this is just an example. You have the word in English, no? Because I write in English. I am Cebuano. I understand Cebuano, of course. I understand Tagalog to some extent. Cebuano to some extent. But English, I think I have some mastery of it. That's why I write in English. No? Okay. Anyway, give me an example, sense for language. Okay? In English, there is the word faith. F-A-I-T-H. Okay? That word has many connotations and denotations. One denotation is trust. Trust. T-R-U-S-T. If I have faith in you, I trust you. Correct? Okay. Why do I trust you? I am convinced that you are okay. No? No. What else does faith mean? Okay. Trust, conviction, commitment. Commitment. If you are convinced that your country, is inang bayan, no? I stay here in the Philippines. This is my country. I will never immigrate to America. Okay? I am Filipino. I will not be an American citizen. I am Filipino. Okay? You are committed to your country. Nah? Whoever is the president of this country committed to his country. Convinced is, or to put it very simply, is the president of this country a public servant. He's concerned about his people. And also I want to ask, who is the Secretary of Education now? Because education is so important. Correct? Education is important for the consciousness of the students. What is true, what is right, what is just. Education, critical thinking, etc. I talk too much already.
Junley, siguro ikaw makasagot. Second question.
Thank you, sir. Ano na nga yung sagot? Tanong.
Natandaan ko, sige ito. Paano rin makakapagsulat na hindi na-offend yung ibang grupo na sinusulat niya?
I draw my response from Isabelo de los Reyes. Para hindi na naman ako marekta. Less is solved. Openness to diversity, I think. That's what I think we can learn from the works of Isabelo de los Reyes. In his writings, he's very open to diversity. When he did field work and described ethnicity of the Tingyan, he was the first to call the Tingyans his brothers. No one ever before him did that. They called the native savages as remontados, igurotes, etc. So siyang unang nagsabi na my brothers. Pangalawa, when he talked about and wrote about Ilocano folklore, for example, he distinguished and recognized the variety. So this traditional practice is done differently in Lawag, sabihin niya. So walang sa kanya one size fits all. Pero merong pagkakatulad, sabihin niya. So yung pag pinanganak kasi yung Ilocano, di ba, yung placenta ay importante sa mga Ilocano. So sabihin niya, in Ilocos Sur, the placenta is placed at the topmost part of a tree. But that we don't do that in vegan. In Lawag, they do another thing. But the same, the principle is that may value yung placenta. And it's something symbolic. and also eventually scientific kasi you have to dispose of it properly. So ganon. Pagiging hindi lang kailangan maalam sa pagkakaiba, kundi respeto sa pagkakaiba-iba ng iyong kultura. At gusto ko dong i-link doon sa lecture ni National Artist Abad, yung universe, no? We and the universe, the world, palaging nag-evolve. So even culture and our cultural practices ay hindi ang tawag doon, ano sa tawag sa language yung naka-preserve, nag-evolve yun. So kung iba na yung ginagawa natin ngayon, baka nagbago talaga dahil sa tawag ng panahon, dahil sa kawalan na ng resources, kaya ganito na yung uri ng mga pananamit, etc. Thank you. Ewan ko kung na tama yung sinagot.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
I want to add something. No? Okay. The farmer works the soil to produce his crop. Di ba? The writer works the language to create his short story or his poem. He works the language. That's what I really want. That's why I want mastery of the language. No? You know what happens when you write? You know what happens when you write? You create your own path through the wilderness, the lexical wilderness of language. And then you make your own clearing in that language, within that language. That's writing.
Thank you. I think it's fitting that we end with the words of the national artist. In the interest of time, I think we will not entertain any more questions. However, you have the opportunity to ask whatever questions you have outside, because there's coffee and bread outside, so a little bit of chatting. We can do that later on here. Pero ayun, because there's no eating here in the Teatro. Ayun, so I think that's okay. Medyo nabitin tayo, but we can always ask our questions later on when we have coffee. We have, this is the time of the program where we present our certificates to our panelists and thank them. So may I please call to the stage our Dean Dr. Fong and the Director of the UPNWW, Sir Roland Tolentino. Okay, so we will be presenting their certificates. Firstly to this certificate of appreciation is presented to Dr. Gemino Abad for participating as a speaker of the 62nd National Writers Workshop, the Central Writers Program, Literature as Memory Street, given this 12th of April at the Teatro Amianan here at the University of Baguio. He is given a second certificate from our college. Another certificate of appreciation to Dr. Romulo Baquiran Jr. To Kenneth Roland Guda. And to Mr. Junley Lazaga. And thank you. So that concludes our extension lectures of the UPNWW. Let us, I think it's time for photo ops po. Okay. So ayan, reminder po, may kape at tinapay dito in the right side and then CR to the left. I am told that may i-represent daw sila for UP Baguio. Okay, we receive books from the Institute of Kerima. Thank you very much. Salamat po sa mga libro. Yan. Ayan, please fill in the evaluation form, a questionnaire that was given to you. Please fill in the evaluation form that was given to you, and also announcing na meron ding poetry slam event na mangyayari